Hi, I'm Donald Davidson. I'm the historian for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this is part of the series called Stories with Donald. Winning was shot in the summer of '68, and I think they were here over about a 3 or a 4 week period, but a lot of locals were the extras. I mean, they put the word out to people to just come and be extras in non-acting roles. And typically, I think a lot of those films, those actors aren't paid, or the people that do those extras aren't paid. Well, they were. I think they got $10 a day, everybody, and I don't know if that was 50 or 100 people. And they gave them lunch, but I mean, it was a pretty neat paid gig. So there was a lot of retirees and people that like work the night shift at Allison's or something would come over in the day. I know some ladies bought their knitting, and there was like, 4 or 5 senior assistant ladies that said, oh dear, this will be fun. Let's go over, and they were over here every day. And it's funny because if you're really paying attention to the background, I mean, they would move them around from grandstand to grandstand, and sometimes you'll see the same person is sort of jotting around, apparently sitting in different grandstands all at the same time. But it was Paul Newman, Joanne Woodard, and Robert Wagner. They were going to shoot in the spring. But because a turbine had almost won in 1967, the question was, we want to be as authentic as possible when this movie comes out. So we want the winner in the movie to be driving something that is was basically the winning car or something very close to it. And so the thinking was, well, a turbine could win. Now, Roger Ward, two-time Indianapolis 500 winner, was the special consultant, if you like, technical advisor, and in fact drove the camera car. So off on a little bit of a tangent here. When they did the mock racing shots, the camera car, I think, was a Chrysler, and they'd taken the door out. It was a convertible. They'd taken the door out and put a platform, and the director of photography, whose name escapes me now, actually lay on a platform sticking out of the side of the car with the camera on. And instead of like, the B cameraman or an assistant doing those shots, the chief cameraman did the stuff himself, and Roger Ward was driving the car, and so little bit of trivia there. Well, anyway, so Roger was probably the one that brought up the point. We don't know, if a turbine wins, then we want Paul Newman the Paul Newman character to be in a turbine. So let's shoot stuff during practice and qualifications, but we won't do the main script and do the mock footage until after the race is over, so which they did. And so Bobby Unser wins the race with the Rislone Special, and it is the Crawford oil special, I think, in the movie, but it's the paint job is virtually identical. Well, anyway, weather really hampered qualifications, and we kind of forget that now because the race day was great, but there was a lot of rain in May of '68, and cars getting stuck in the mud, and all the infield was really badly torn up. Clarence Cagle was very proud of the grounds and would keep it, tip-top shape all the time. And so when in the movie, when Paul Newman arrives by helicopter, it was supposed to be the early part of May, there was hardly any grass left at all. Shot in June, I think. And as the chopper comes down, there's this massive dust goes up as if it was, Oklahoma, during the drought or something like that. And I thought, I never talked to Clarence Cagle about it, but I thought he must have been horrified to see how terrible the track looked. But anyway, I'm not sure whether Paul Newman had any interest in racing. Robert Wagner didn't. But Paul Newman either had a little bit of an interest, or one way or another, it definitely grabbed him during the making of the film. And so I never came over during any of the shooting, although I was working for the United States Auto Club just on 16th Street, which is, half a mile away, and I never went. But on the final day of shooting, Henry Banks, former national champion, who was now the director of competition, went over to give honorary USAC championship driver's licenses to Paul Newman and Robert Wagner. And I remember Henry coming back and saying, boy, that Paul Newman's really a racing enthusiast. And he said, after I'd given him the cards, he said, Robert Wagner, he said, I don't think he cared, he just sort of stuffed it in his pocket. But he said, after we were done, he said, Paul Newman came over and said, what do I have to do to get a real one of these? And Henry said, run a lot more than you have been. In the movie, it's fun to watch because several drivers appear, not only in the stock footage, but Johnny Rutherford, I think, is a very brief speaking part, and I remember there was ladies that were like in credentials, and if you look in the background, you think, oh, there's so-and-so, oh, there's so-and-so. And Bob Clydenst, who was legendary in the model making business, if you would call it that, who worked at the track in PR for years and years and years. His dad was the chief mechanic. He has a very brief speaking part. It's the day after the race, and he said, I was just going to be sitting in the stands, and then he said, then they said, hey, do you want to be a mechanic? And then the next thing, when the day after the race, Paul Newman's walking through the garage area or the pits, I forget now, but there's several people said, Rutherford says, good job or something. And then there's a fellow that says, hey, you were really whistling yesterday or something like that. That's Bob Clyden's. They had a replica Borg Warner trophy. They did a replication in Hollywood somewhere, maybe Culver City, of the lobby of the Speedway Motel, and then also what I think became the flag room. But there's this part where Bobby Unser talks to Paul Newman, and Paul Newman comes walking in carrying the Borg Warner trophy and puts it on the ground. And there's a young lady who comes up and says, oh, I know, I've just had a very brief line. And I think she asked, can I pick it up or something? Anyway, she does. She reaches forward it, and she picks up the Borg Warner trophy and looks at it and then puts it down. And I thought, Foyt couldn't lift that thing by himself. So, and then the fact that I think, does Paul Newman come in? I think he's carrying it under his arm. Well, number one, they don't give you the Borg Warner trophy to take around. That stays permanently. And then the other thing is, good luck lifting it up and walking around with one arm. I don't think Mr. Universe couldn't do that, I don't think.